Hello, I'm David Breeden. I'm the senior minister at First Unitarian Society of Minneapolis, a historically humanist congregation. And this is Coffee and Wisdom Summer Style, in which we are live at 9 a.m. Central Time on Tuesdays and Thursdays. For the next couple of weeks, I want to be talking about Onward, Upward, and which for me anyway, kind of brings up the idea of ideas whose time has gone, maybe. When something has been around as long as Unitarian Universalism and Unitarianism and liberal religion, uh, the ideas that have come up over these centuries have changed. Some are continue to define what all of this is, and some don't. And what I'd like to look at is good ideas and bad ideas, sometimes bad ideas that stick around, whether they should or not. Well, let's look at a politician that didn't stick around very long, Dan Quayle, who once said, "We will move forward, we will move upward, and yes, we will move onward," which I'm not quite sure what the difference in all of those is directionally, but you get the idea. He was being quite American in his way of speaking there. We can go to good old C.S. Lewis in Narnia, "Onward and upward to Narnia and the North." So onward and upward is a phrase that was born in the late 19th century, and we use it almost nowadays as a cliche, not really thinking about what it even means, hence a quote such as the one from Dan Quayle. Well, actually, the idea of onward and upward has a very good genealogy, shall we say, very traceable, because it is a mid to late 19th century idea. So if you go looking in antique bookstores, you're going to find a lot of books like the ones I have here, The 19th Century, Its History, Progress, and Marvelous Achievements, A Progress of Inventions in the 19th Century, Progresses of the Nation, etc. And you're going to see that term progress over and over and over. Yes, the dawn of a century as the 20th century rolled in. And indeed, we've got, the 20th century, XX century, I guess, Lady Liberty. She's there on a wheel that has some angel wings. We've got locomotives, we've got cars, we've got flying machines. Oh, by golly, this is going to be a really good century, they were saying in 1899. And yes, there is good old Thomas Edison with his brilliant idea of the light bulb. This is probably the most famous of the pictures of Miss Progress or Miss Liberty. Here she is sweeping in her angelic garb, spreading along the way. She's pulling a telegraph wire that she has draped over her arm there in the crook of her arm. And running before her, if you look to the left of the picture, are wild animals, bears growling. Yes, Native Americans who are frightened of all of this progress, and the buffalo. Not a very nice kind of picture from our perspective nowadays, but very much part of, unfortunately, the ideas of the late 19th and early 20th centuries in the US, that progress meant running away with and taking over the land and investing in it all kinds of infrastructure like the Pony Express we can see there, settlements we can see there, Wells Fargo we can see there, and of course, locomotives and agriculture as brought in from Europe. You can read everywhere about this. This is an idea that came into the Western world very early on, the perfectibility of man. Probably the best book still on this, even though it's a bit agey at this point, is The Perfectibility of Man by John Passmore, philosopher and historian, who talks about the bad ideas that have given rise from the idea that we need to have some kind of progress and perfectibility in human nature and in human society. Dr. Passmore definitely thinks that the idea of perfectibility and progress go hand in hand and always lead to very bad things. And therefore, yep, you would say, wait a minute, I don't think this is quite as good as as it at first appears. The late 19th, early 20th centuries, progress in the moderate. You can tell how American political ideologies have changed. Here we have old man moderate on the right, and yes, he is being helped out by a devilish looking fellow called Greed, who is into trusts and dividends. And of course, the motive spirit, the progressive, which with a very trendy hat, a very young person who is being helped by Lady Liberty with all kinds of progressive ideas that are going to remake the way America is working. Now, how does this fit into liberal religion? Well, comes in very early on. The Transcendental Club, which, by the way, is not the name of the club, according to the people. It was given to them by a critic in 1837. But they were a group of Unitarians, for the most part, progressive liberals, who began to meet and talk about a new way of doing religion in this new America that they were seeing. Historian James Elliott Cabot described the group thusly: the occasional meetings of a changing group of liberal thinkers agreeing in nothing but their liberality, and otherwise they were not in agreement. But the Transcendental Club, so-called, leads to the idea of transcendentalism, which is very important in both American spirituality and also in Unitarianism. A little easy definition here: transcendentalism is the spiritual unity of all forms of being, with God, man, and nature all sharing a universal soul. As a matter of fact, and many would say this oversoul idea then would be God, and that everyone is part of the consciousness of God. It's sort of pantheism going on there. This was not an ideologically coercive club in any way, group. So all the ideas are all over the place in terms of what all of this actually means. Well, one of the younger members of that group was James Freeman Clarke, 1810 to 1888. So his life really goes across that 19th century, and he was a Unitarian minister. Lots of books by James Freeman Clarke. Probably his most famous these days is 10 Great Religions, a very early comparative religion idea. Yes, in Mr. Clarke's view, Christianity is the end of religion. It's at the high point of human religion. But if we give him that and kind of say, okay, that's what you think, it's not a bad book in its look at the world religions. A book about him that's very interesting is James Freeman Clarke, Apostle of German Culture to America, by John Wesley Thomas. Mr. Clarke actually did not study in German theological schools, as did many Unitarians in the day, but he was keeping up with what was going on in German theology, which was super liberal in those days. And he got many of his ideas by reading books, because he was able to read German. So he becomes a abolitionist, certainly, and also a utopianist. Again, that perfectibility of the human nature that's going to lead us towards some kind of a golden tomorrow of social justice. An important book, kind of forgotten these days, but it's still very much a part of Unitarian and Universalist tradition, is the Manual of Unitarian Belief by James Freeman Clarke. This was everywhere in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. It was in every church library, and it can still be found in a lot of places today. It really summarized where the Unitarians were hoping religion was going to go, and he was the great spokesman for it. So let's take a little look at what he wrote, and this was published in 1886 as kind of the culmination of James Freeman Clarke's thought. Well, he believed that Unitarians believed in the fatherhood of God, the brotherhood of man, the leadership of Jesus, salvation by character, and this onward and upward thing, and the continuity of human development in all worlds, or the progress of mankind onward and upward forever. So let's look at those very quickly here. One, the fatherhood of God, God the Father, as a benevolent and non-coercive force, shall we say, a force for good and toward good in the universe and in our world. The brotherhood of man, yes, sexist language, but the idea being that all of humanity are brothers and sisters. This is going to lead to that idea of looking at the great world religions, saying, oh, you know what, all of them have a very common idea at their center, so we need to respect all of them, although, of course, Unitarian Christianity is the greatest of them all, according to the people of the time. And the leadership of Jesus. Now, notice that this is where the Unitarians were in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Jesus is not Christ. That name isn't there. It's the leadership of Jesus. It's not the lordship of Jesus. It's the leadership of Jesus. And the idea here is to look at the Gospels and learn what this person, this man, actually said and did. And then we need to have our lives live up to the great example of Jesus. Then this very interesting idea of salvation by character. Again, this is often, like Onward and Upward, made fun of a bit nowadays. What did they really mean by that? But it's very much in the ideas of self-culture and self-development that were very much a part of the 19th century. So salvation by character. You can make your character better by cultivation, by following Jesus, by believing in the brotherhood of man, by believing in the fatherhood of God, and then you can be a better person, and then, of course, a better citizen in the United States. As a matter of fact, Freeman said this, James Freeman Clarke, seek to do good and you will find that happiness will run after you. So we want happiness, do good, be pro-social. Or this a little bit longer, but very much a part of his ideas and thinking. Every man, every woman, every child has some talent, some power, some opportunity of getting good and doing good. So you can get good, that's your character, and then you can do good in the world. Each day offers some occasion for using this talent. As we use it, it gradually increases, improves, becomes native to the character. As we neglect it, it dwindles, withers, and disappears. This is the stern but benign law by which we live. So do good and you get better a little bit every day. Again, this idea of self-cultivation. Which brings us to the last on this list of what Unitarians believe, and the continuity of human development in all worlds. I'm really not sure what that means. I guess it means he believed in an afterlife, or, and I don't know why this is an either or either, we would have to ask the good professor, doctor, or the progress of mankind onward and upward forever. And here you go, buying into the idea of progress, that things are only going to get better for human beings onward and upward forever. Now, I want to consider two ideas that may or may not be the same idea. It's very debatable among philosophers and historians. And that is the idea of progress, which we saw as Lady Liberty chasing away all the people so that Europeans could move to the West. And then this idea of meliorism, the belief that the world naturally tends to improve and that human effort can greatly aid its betterment. That is the arc of justice, in the universe moving toward justice, this idea that there has to be some kind of good in the world that exists and drives things toward this better and better and better. Not exactly the same as progress, arguably. I don't really know, but let's look at it for a moment. This is a critique of meliorism. This is from the 1950s by Dr. Daniel Summer Robinson, who was a philosopher. He says this: Never were cynical pessimism and generous optimism more indissolubly wedded than in that interesting philosophy of life known as meliorism. For in the same breath, this theory scathingly condemns the existing world as a sorry state of affairs and affirms with confident assurance the ability of human intelligence to make it over. So, you're going to notice some of your friends and probably yourself here a little bit. The liberal progressive idea, a belief that the world is not good at the present moment, but it will get better. All we have to do is keep going. He goes on, with unquestioning, if not naive and childlike faith, its advocates have adopted the practical motto, let us make a better world. Meliorism is militant, abetted by the propaganda of the numerous humanitarian organizations which naturally sprang up during and immediately following the World War. It has won to its support representatives in almost every walk of life. And that's true. Look at the list of nonprofits that you may belong to or contribute to, and almost all of them are going to have some version of this meliorism. Things are bad right now, but by golly, they got to get better, and we are going to work on that. So my question to leave with you is there a difference between progress and meliorism? And another question is, are both of those concepts utter nonsense? I'll leave you with this idea. Damon Linker is a writer for the New Republic and The Week, a commentator, and he wrote this right after the election of 2016. The title was, Liberals Think History is on their side. They couldn't be more wrong. It's time for self-righteous liberals to wake up from their dogmatic slumber. They, liberals, this is a quote, see it as a shocking and appalling setback, yes, but also one that in the longer term they are bound to reverse. That would be the election of Donald Trump. The racists, sexists, bigots, and xenophobes managed to eke out a victory this one time, but this is but a hiccup in the inexorable unfolding of justice. Everyone knows the good guys, meaning themselves, are sure to win in the long run, which means just as surely that the bad guys, glorying in temporary triumph, will soon die off or get deposited in the trash heap of history, enabling the forward march of progress to resume its rightful course. All right. Not to put too fine a point on it, but this is nonsense, the purest fiction. Well, that's what a conservative thinker says. Which one is true? That's a question for you to be thinking about. One thing that we do know is that in terms of the political ideology, this is a recent Pew Research Center look at American Christians, people who say they are Christian, and their political ideology. In the political ideology, 36% of Christians say they are conservative, 33% say they are moderate, 24% say they're liberal, and 7% don't know. All right, so if we look at the numbers, where is the dividing line as conservative to moderate to liberal? And we can see the pure numbers. Now, why does it look like this? Because at this point, about 24% of Americans call themselves nones. So the liberal category is dropping off very, very quickly in terms of people who call themselves Christians. That doesn't mean, however, that all of the nones are liberal either. But if you notice, one thing that we do have to think about is the fact that rather than going more and more toward a progressive liberal side, actually American Christians in general are going toward a more conservative to moderate side. At least that's what the numbers tell us at the present time. So, is it true that progress is occurring and everything is getting better? Or what else? So we're going to have to think about that, and I'll be back with you again on Thursday morning, 9 a.m. Central Time, to talk about it a little bit more. And as we go into the month of July, our theme at First Unitarian Society is Journey. Here we go, off on our journey, and we'll just have to figure out if it's one that leads to progress and meliorism, or is it going somewhere else? something to think about, and I will see you on Thursday.